to July 11th, 2024 Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 6:04 p.m. and we have a quorum of 5 people. And first thing on our agenda, we want to make sure that everyone understands the protocol that we have set in place, that we will have our meeting agenda, and then when we start the public hearings order, you will have an opportunity. We will have the presentation of the hearing, then we will have a staff report, then we will have the applicant presentation, and we will have person wishing to speak for or against, and then we will have our discussion, and then we will have a consideration and possible action. So we would like to continue with our meeting with the approval of minutes from the June 2024. Do we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from June 2024?
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes from the June 6, 2024 meeting.
Second that.
It's been motion and second. Any discussion? It was a C instead of a K? Yeah. Note that there's a name that should be Marklewis if it's a misspelling.
We'll take a look at that and make sure that it's reflected.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? Note the name correction. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. We'd like to move into our regular agenda for consideration and possible action. VARZ 24-11, variances to reduce the rear setback and for an attached patio to encroach on an easement. Public hearing. This is a request by Brad Kong, applicant, on behalf of Patrick Bell, owner, for approval of a variance as permitted by the Unified Development Code Ordinance number 2000-T to allow a variance to the 20-foot rear building setback requirement for the single-family residential district, to allow for a building to encroach into the rear building setback, and B, a variance for an attached patio cover sharing the roof line of the main structure to encroach an easement. This has a general location of 3017 Green Tea Drive, Pearland, Texas. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, this request has kind of 2 parts to it. The first part is that kind of a retroactive permit to allow for that unpermitted building expansion to be set back 8 foot 8 inches from the rear property line in lieu of the required 20-foot rear setback for the building, and for the building to encroach 7 foot 8 inches on the 16-foot utility easement. The second part of the request is for that attached patio cover, and that is to allow for the proposed cover to extend 6 feet into the 16-foot utility easement. So staff wrote wrote letters and posted legal ad for notification of the residents. With that, we received no written comments or phone calls, either in support or in opposition of this request. And then getting into the maps and exhibits for this case. As you can see, this property is all within the R1 single-family residential zoning district and has R1 on all 4 sides and is abutted to the rear by the creek there. The future land use shows all of the residential developed pieces in low density residential, and then open space for the creek backing up to the properties. Again, taking a look closer at the property, you can see single family residential and Clear Creek to the back. Going over a little bit of history, the property was annexed into the city in 1970. It was platted in 1970 as part of the Green Tea Section 1 And then the property was developed in 1981 with a single-family residence. Here you can see some pictures of the property from Green Tea Drive. And then diving into the site plan, we've got a few items to make note of. First is the red box on the upper left portion of the screen. There you can see that unpermitted building expansion that does go into the required rear setback. As we note, that was done prior to this applicant owning the property. So that's why we're kind of viewing that request A as a retroactive variance for something that the property owner wasn't in control of. The yellow outlined areas for the proposed attached patio cover, and then there is that existing single-family residence, of course, as the main structure of the property. Taking a look at the elevations, just to draw note, this piece of the elevation is where that building expansion is. And as you can see above it, they do have a patio that is above that encroachment. Taking a look at either side, again, you can kind of view that building encroachment. And then this is the proposed awning or the proposed patio cover. Again, you can see that outdoor patio, again, on both sides of the elevation. So diving into request A, this is for that minimum rear setback. The R1 district has a required rear setback of 20 feet. And then going into what is proposed, you can see that it is 8 foot 8 inches off of the rear property line. And the bold dashed line shows the required 20-foot rear setback. Here showing in the red bold dashed line, you can see the 16-foot utility easement. And we note that it is that the structure is 7 foot 8 inches into that utility easement. Going into request B, this is for the attached patio variance. As y'all may remember, the Unified Development Code has the allowance for attached patio covers as long as they maintain the roofline projection and that they are allowed to go no more than 50% into the required rear setback. Again, that required rear setback being 20 foot, 50% of it is 10 foot, so it's allowed to encroach 10 feet into that required setback. Here you can see, again, that utility easement and where they are encroaching into, or proposed for encroachment of that covered patio. Then it approximately maintains a similar frontage or similar rear edge with that existing storage, as it's nearly with the same plane of face there. So taking a look at the criteria for approval, you can see a variety of no's on the on whether they meet various criteria for approval. Just to highlight some of those no's, the circumstances arising from the physical surrounding shape or other features affecting the land, such as the application of the provisions of the code to the proposed use, creates an undue hardship. That's essentially saying that there's nothing physically keeping this property from meeting the requirements of the Unified Development Code. And that circumstances causing the hardship do not similarly affect all or most properties in the vicinity of the petitioner's land. Staff found that criteria to not be in effect because the creek and all properties on that side of the road are all in the R1 single-family residential zoning district and all have the creek abutting to the rear. So they all have similar potential for hardships with the same zoning and the same land use features around them. And then the hardship suffered by the petitioner is not caused wholly or insubstantially by, or in substantial part by the petitioner. Again, as this is for new requests that met the no, and for the degree of variance requested is the minimum amount necessary to meet the needs of the applicant and to satisfy the standards of this section. On request A, since it is an existing structure, that is the minimum that they could request for. On B, they could potentially bring that attached patio back or forward towards the front property, thus making it less of a request to be in the, or to have more of a requested deviation. So with that, on request A, it meets 5 out of 8 of the criteria. The applicant identified the existing building expansion does not encroach on any adjacent residential neighbors as the property is located along Clear Creek to the rear. And while the location of the property along Clear Creek is not a unique physical feature of the site, staff does recognize that the structure does not impact a residential neighbor to their rear of the property. In addition, the applicant also identified that the utility easement appears to be vacant and that structures are typically not permitted within easements as they may impact the ability for either existing utilities to be maintained or for new utilities to be placed in those easements. However, staff recognizes that the existing expansion was constructed prior to the property owner's purchase of the property. Therefore, staff offers no objection to the requested variance for the existing building expansion, with the understanding that the property owner is aware that the existing building expansion may need to be removed if any future utility provider needs access to the 16-foot utility easement that exists today. On for request B, this request meets 4 out of the 8 criteria. The applicant identified that the utility easement at the rear of the property appears to be vacant and that they are requesting letters of no objection from the utility providers. Again, while that utility easement may not be or may not have current utility lines, structures are typically not permitted within utility easements, and as they may impact the ability for either the existing utilities to be maintained or for new utilities to be placed within those easements. Therefore, staff is unable to recommend approval of the requested variance. However, should the board approve the requested variance for the proposed attached patio, then the board should approve with the understanding that the property owner is aware that the proposed attached patio may need to be removed if any future utility provider needs access to that 16-foot utility easement. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Do we have an applicant presentation? Yes, sir. Would you go to the podium and state your name and address for us?
Good afternoon, board. My name is Brad Kuhn, and my address is 2303 Fairway Circle in Pearland, Texas. First, I just wanted to thank the board for your time this evening, and thank you for the city staff for putting together that presentation. And just to mimic what Martin had said, we had requested from AT&T and Comcast, which were the only people that say that they use that easement. Has been vacated back in the 70s. All the utilities come from the front of the property, from Green Tea Drive. I'm just waiting to get the letter back in hand. I'm sure the tropical storm didn't help, but really don't have much of a presentation other than we have requested the letters. The pool that was existing is built also onto that, and this variance was approved for that pool, I believe, 3 to 4 years ago. So this was for the structure, and they even wanted to go further beyond, and I talked to them to keep a bathroom inside of that existing shed that they kind of inherited that was built over unpermitted. So I'm trying to keep them away from going farther and farther back. That's what the homeowners want to do. I'm just trying to keep them within reason. Like, let's stay off the easement just so we don't have to worry about it. But it is a vacated easement. I said, like, for the pool that was put there 3 or 4 years ago, there was a variance approved for that. But other than that, that's pretty much waiting for those letters and any feedback from the board.
We will get feedback a little bit later.
Roger that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Do we have any persons wishing to speak for or against proposal? We'd like to move into our staff and commission and applicant discussion. Any questions from the board to the staff or to the applicant? Statements? I have a couple of questions. So, yes, if you would, Brad, go to the podium. So you're saying that there's a pool there currently now that's actually in the easement as well?
I believe so. It's like this is what it looked like on that picture. I don't know if Martin could pull that one back up. That showed the pool into the red, or part of the
Gotcha. Okay.
or part of the coping rather.
And then when the owners purchased this, there was already an existing
Yeah, that little
storage.
that little pool shed off to this side was basically where they're gonna put the pool bathroom, because they want a bathroom out there so people don't have to be trekking into their house because there's no bathroom directly located in the back. I mean,
So, and what is the objection to reducing it 2 feet so it will be within the proposed criteria? Is it 2 feet, Martin? For the patio, for the B section?
I think it's the rear setback that he's talking about, so it's a prior slide than this. I think there's one more. It was yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, and I was just looking from, so if this is the 20-foot required and they're allowed to go 10 foot into it, then that 10 foot would, if this is 8 foot 8, then it would come to about here. It's the fact that it is that the proposed patio cover is within the utility easement.
Gotcha, so the
Part
cover
of-
itself, gotcha. Okay.
Part of that requirement is that it's not encroaching into any utility easement.
But we do have letters saying that the companies would not be using that area in the back. It's vacant.
yes, sir. They have an application on CenterPoint and AT&T, and I have requested and emailed those letters. I've also spoken to the people that lived there previously, and that it took a little while to get the letters, but the letters have been requested. And like I said, a few years back when the variance was approved for the pool, the letters were obtained. I
Okay.
was waiting on those 2 letters to say that they don't even use the easement. I mean, the cable and the internet, everything, gas, electricity, all comes from the front.
Okay.
There's nothing back along the creek, no, sir.
Okay.
We're just waiting on the letters. I just don't have the physical letter.
Okay. Thank you, Brad.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Okay, thank you, Brad. We'd like to move into consideration and possible action. Would you place the proposals, motions on the, Todd, would you?
So this is request A is on screen right now.
Do we want to vote on them separately, or are we going to do them together?
Yes, let's vote on this separately. Separately, yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the VARZ 24-11 request A as presented with staff's recommendations.
It's been motioned. Is there a second? It's been motioned and second. Any discussion?
That second was from Ms. Cook, right?
No discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries for A for the variance on this 5-0. Would you read the second?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. go ahead.
okay. I make a motion that we conditionally approve a variance VARZ 2411 Part B, dealing with the attached patio cover sharing the roof line of the main structure to encroach on an easement, conditioned upon receipt of the letters from the utility company saying that they no longer have a claim on that utility easement behind the property line there.
It's been motioned and second.
If I may clarify, sometimes the utilities will provide a letter of no objection. Other times they may say they no longer, that the easement has been released. Will either of those suffice?
Yes, yes.
It's been motioned and second.
I'll second it.
It's been motioned and second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. We'd like to move into our second order of business, which is a consideration of possible action, VARZ 24-12, a variance to deviate from the required landscape buffer between non-residential and single-family residential. This is a request by Trong Dong and Sheila Rowley, applicant on behalf of the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston owner for approval of a variance as permitted by the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000-T, to deviate from the required landscape buffer for a non-residential use that has a side or rear contiguous to any residential use or residential zoning district. This has a general location of 1750 Riverstone Ranch Drive, Pearland, Texas. Staff report, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. For this staff report, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Katja Copeland. Katja, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This request is for an approval to allow for a deviation from the required landscape buffer for a non-residential use that has a side or rear contiguous to any residential use or residential zoning district. The code requires a 30-foot landscape buffer or a 25-foot landscape buffer with a 6-foot masonry wall between non-residential uses that are adjacent to properties zoned or used for single-family residential. We received 152 written comments, all in support of the requested variance tonight. Shown on the screen are pictures of the property. This is the aerial and zoning map. You can see that 3 sides of the property have R1 zoning, and to the northeast is the City of Houston ETJ. This is the aerial and zoning map, low density residential. Another aerial view of the adjacent zoning and the City of Houston ETJ alongside a school to the south. History of this property. This property was annexed into the city in 2002, and in November 2012, City Council approved a conditional use permit to allow for a 10,125 square foot church building to be constructed on the property as the first phase of the development of this property. And the subject property was then platted in 2013, and the proposed building was constructed in that same year. Here are some photos of the property. This was taken alongside the Riverstone Ranch Drive street. This is the view of the property from the northwest and the southwest. Proposed site plan is on the screen for your viewing. You can see with the 2 red arrows the proposed improvements, and the cloud along the west and south is the proposed landscape buffer that we are hearing the variance request tonight. The proposed improvements consist of a 26,000 square foot building alongside a 2,000 square foot maintenance building and additional parking and drives. Shown on the screen is the landscape buffer variance, noting the section in the UDC. 30-foot landscape buffer, 25-foot landscape buffer with a 6-foot masonry wall is required between non-residential uses that are adjacent to properties zoned or used for single-family residential. Again, the proposed site plan with the required landscape buffer highlighted in yellow. Please note that in the black text with the numbers on the top, note the distance from the property line to the proposed building expansion. Note that those numbers are 580 feet from the west to, the west of this screen, to the building, and then from the south to the north is 385 feet. The criteria of approval is shown on the screen now, and the request meets 2 out of the 8 criteria noted in the UDC. Staff analysis, the request again meets 2 of the 8 criteria in section 2.252D of the UDC for granting variances. The hardship stated by the applicant does not pertain to a physical feature of the property that is unique to the site, as other properties in the area have been required to meet the landscape buffer. However, staff does recognize that the proposed project is approximately 580 feet from the northwest property and approximately 385 feet from the southwest property line, as we saw in those previous images. Also, the requested variance is not to remove the requirement of the landscape buffer entirely from the site, but to defer the requirement until the northwest and southwest quadrants of the site are going to be developed in the future. The applicant has identified that the construction of the landscape buffer will be more appropriate in the future phases of this development. Finally, staff is not strongly opposed, but must maintain the code and therefore is unable to recommend approval of the requested variance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We would like to have, if there an applicant presentation, if you would, please go to the podium and state your name and address for us.
My name is Pete Ed Garrett, Studio Red Architects in Houston, Texas. I'm here representing my partners, Trung Doan and Sheila Rowley. We are here as the applicant representative for the Diocese of Galveston, Houston, as well.
Could you get closer to the microphone for us? Yes, thank you so much.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Pete Ed Garrett, Studio Red Architects, Houston, Texas. I'm here to represent my partners, Trung Doan and Sheila Rowley, for this variance request. What we would like to show today is a little more support of the distance of the 580 feet as well as the 385 feet from the buildings to the property lines, and be able to share with you our thoughts in a true master plan. We have.
Sorry, apologies. It requires a sign-in for the laptop.
While we're doing that, we understand the hardship on the financial basis does not have any influence on the features of the site. The financial hardship has a hardship on the phase 2 of this multi-phase project if we need to provide the landscaping buffer for the full 20 acres when this phase 2 is only developing 2.3 acres of the overall site, as well as being so remote from the R1 zones to the southwest and the northwest. With that, we're looking at a master plan where there's multiple phases. We'll show you in a moment. Looking at this master plan for the full 20 acres could be as much as 7 different phases of construction. Most of the later phases, which we are speculating and forecasting what those building spaces would be, are along that north along that southwest property line, which is about 1,380 lineal feet of property line. As we move those into the future years, we would be looking at verifying if we have the right ministry spaces for that phase or if we would change something different. Therefore, it could be a possibility that we would do more landscaping for a prayer garden or something of that nature and have that related with the landscape buffer that would be along that property line along the southwest. So we're asking for that deferment for that very reason, as well as the infrastructure for irrigation and keeping the trees alive in this present time or this present phase would be the hardship being able to run over almost 3,000 lineal feet of irrigation lines because of the location of our water connection, and then bringing it all the way to the southwest and northwest in reference to our property that we're building in this phase 2 is actually on the southeast corner. So what I'd like to do is share with you a little more detail which was presented of this phase 2 site plan. Again, it's 2.3 acres, so it's a little over 10% of the overall project. We were hoping that the hardship of the landscape buffer would, we would not be required to landscape buffer 100% of the 20-acre site when we are only developing about 10% of the site. As you can see, the 2-acre phase 2 site is right there, dead center on the plan. I'll call this plan north side. That is our 20,000 square foot building and maintenance facility and parking. And you can see there's a football field distance to the bottom of the R1 zone to the southwest, and that 580 feet to the left, which would be our northwest. With that comments, that allows you to see that we're, again, just doing the 10% of the site. This phase has no street frontage view. The street frontage landscaping requirements was taken care of in the phase 1 building that is there today. So again, over the 12 years that we've been there, there has not been any residential complaints over the last 12 years that we or the church knows about. So again, we can see that we are the furthest away from the R1 zones of City of Pearland, and we'd like to see if we could have that deferment of the landscape buffer at this time. The next slide I'll show you is our multi-phase site plan. You can see the large number 2, which relates to, and you can see the rectangular 2-acre site. You can see the number 1, which is the building that is built today. You can see everything below the numbers 1 and 2 is future phases, and that's where we come up with approximately the potential of having 7 different building phases. As we build more towards the bottom or plan north, southwest or plan south, you can see we have larger buildings, more influence in terms of budgets, and they would be able to appropriately take care of the landscaping buffers at those times. And we would know exactly what we would like to do with the landscape buffer as well as the landscaping around the campus of the buildings themselves. With that, you can, all master plans need to have flexibilities and options because we're not sure what we may be doing in terms of ministry needs and the type of buildings to support future ministries, 3 years out, 10 years out, whatever. So this is just give you a feel of the magnitude of the overall campus and seeing if we could have this deferment of the landscape buffer along the southwest and the northwest. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any persons wishing to speak for or against proposal? If you would, sir, state your name and address for us.
I'm Douglas Guthrie. Address is 11011 Hall Road, Houston, Texas, 77089. I'm pastor of St. Luke Parish. The church was established in Houston in 1975. We've outgrown the plant. 10 acres of this property was donated by a good Baptist, and then he sold us the other 10 acres at a really good discount. We've been looking forward to developing it. We've been working on it over the years. We're a nonprofit organization, more non than profit, but we keep trying. And we're trying to reach out and help people. We have a number of people from Pearland and Friendswood and Houston who belong to our parish. If we are allowed to have the variance so that we can build, we'll be able to do more and reach out to more people. So we are hoping you will give it your consideration and give us a chance. The heart of our present plant on Hall Road is the courtyard. We have 3 magnificent oak trees. I like to think of them as sisters holding hands. They've grown big over the years, and we want a beautiful campus. We want this to be even more beautiful than what we have. Our architects have been really careful taking care of all the trees that are on this property, the ones that were there naturally and the ones that have been planted in the front. So we want it to be beautiful. We want it to look good. And whatever consideration you give us will be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And make sure that is there a yellow sheet?
Yes, sir. I have the sheet.
Okay, perfect. If you
Whom do I give it?
to Martin, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other persons wishing to speak for or against proposal? Yes, sir. If you would state your name and address.
My name is Phil Hurd. I live at 1419 Blakely Grove Lane, Pearland. I have been a member of the church for 3.5 years now, since I took a job out here. I am the scoutmaster of the scout troop. And I can tell you that the church, and not in any way, I think Father Guthrie was very accurate about wanting the serenity. But I happen to have a young Eagle Scout, and I just wanted to share the seriousness of how much he wants to beautify that property. Where the church sits now, there are 3 magnificent oak trees that were planted sometime in the 1970s. As part of my one of my Eagle Scouts projects was to take saplings of those trees and keep them growing until this new church could move. The church has always been a place for refuge, serenity, prayer, quietness, and an occasional Boy Scout outing. I very much think that this property would sit well. When I heard about this hearing, I went over and I took a look. There's a school that has just been built there that, at least as far as a 6-foot wall, doesn't have one, and there's a school right across the street that doesn't. And I mean, it's flat as a pancake up until the back of these fences. The church is going to do more than that, but they want to do it at a time that is appropriate to do it. And I strongly suggest, as a member of the Pearland community and a member of the church, that you give them that opportunity to do it at the right time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And make sure if you would fill out a yellow form, the yellow forms are right outside. And if you would give that form to Martin. Raise your hand, Martin. Yes. Any other persons wishing to speak for or against proposal? We'd like to move into staff and commission and applicant discussion. Any questions or comments from the board to the staff or applicant?
I have a question of staff, if I could, for clarification purposes. Martin, when the city council voted on the CUP in 2012, is it the practice of council when we get the paperwork back or during the discussion on the vote, prior to the vote of the CUP, if there are any restrictions or I don't even know how to say it honestly, but are any comments directed that are recorded with respect to specific things that are required or requested or that the applicant agreed to do in 2012? I'm strongly supporting this, but my interest is to learn if there's anything in those notes that city council based their vote on that might speak to the timing of putting up a landscape buffer. Anything at all?
There are, I know you asked Martin, Commissioner Shrum, and from the legal perspective with the UDC, there are some things that a CUP can allow and delay, and there's some that cannot. The deferment of the landscaping would not have been one of the things that the UDC would have allowed City Council. They would not have had that authority at that time. I think height is something that they can do, but that wasn't an issue for this particular case. It's very rare for the things that City Council can approve a variance on during the CUP process. So, this not being one of them.
Okay, so whatever our decision is tonight, then we should not be worried about conflicting in any way with whatever the Pearland City Council decided in 2012 when they issued the original CUP.
Correct. So if there was something that was a requirement as part of the original CUP, that would have been enforced during the permitting process for the structure that's currently existing.
Good, thank you.
And again, because this is unique, normally when you hear variances, you're looking for reductions of measurements other than time. Really what we're talking about today is a variance in time, deferral of the landscaping requirement.
And that deferral is based on because we have the new development with their homes in that area against the south side, or have those homes been there?
The homes that are there are, they came before the church. It's really the distance between this development and, well, the distance has several impacts on this development. You know, you can put the landscape buffer there, but are you really buffering anything if it's from the applicant's perspective? Are you really buffering anything if it is the distances that they are, because you already have that much distance between those two things? And then if you do put that landscaping in, if they are required to do it, the irrigation and the way that it has to be laid out now and its potential impacts, because if you don't have that irrigation, whatever landscaping you require now may not be there much longer.
Understand. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Yes, sir. When they come in for an application for whatever the next phase of the development is, they'll still have to review it then. And it may be this board, it may be completely new members. And part of the staff history at that presentation will be this board allowed the deferral until it got closer. How close is too close? That'll be for that next board to decide. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Yes, Tom.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. It's been kind of a crazy week with the storm and everything, so just forgive me for that. So the way I'm understanding the variance is just to postpone the landscaping requirement until further construction is done. Is that
Correct.
a fair assessment?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's my understanding, and I'm looking for the applicant back there to make sure that they agree. That's what I heard them say multiple times as well. It's just deferring until future development when it gets closer to those residential properties.
All right. Sounds
And
good.
this may be something that we look to address in the Unified Development Code, so that way we don't have additional applicants. It's just a very unique situation with a very large lot with a buffer or a requirement in the code that normally we don't have an issue getting compliance with. And this one just happens to have nearly 2,000 linear feet of irrigation that would be it has been a long week, a substantial improvement that may not add a whole lot of additional benefit to this site.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, we'd like to move into consideration and possible action. Don, would you read the motion, please? It's been motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. It is 6:50 p.m. and the Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting for July has been adjourned.